Well, I am very thrilled to be having a chat with the winner of 9 Grand Slam titles. She was ranked number one in the world for 178 weeks, 53 career wins, year-end number one in 1991 and 1992, won a bronze medal in the 2000 Olympics, and of course is a member of the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Monica Seles, I've been looking forward to talking to you. Thank you for doing this for us.
Thanks, Chrissy. It's a very special club, and I'm very honored to be part of it.
Oh, glad to hear that. We're going to go through your whole career, and I just want you to take us back to the beginning and how you fell in love with tennis.
Well, my dad and my brother played back in my former country of Yugoslavia, in club tennis. And my dad just, he worked so much and he had very little free time. But when he did, he loved to play tennis. He was an athlete all his life. And thankfully, he always had a belief to treat both my brother and I equally. And, just said, hey, if you want to go play, hit some balls, let's go. Way back then, kids were really not allowed on tennis courts kind of to play. So my dad says, being the creative person he was, let me put a net between two cars by the high-rise apartment we lived. And that's kind of how I learned to play tennis, and pretty much on the wall by the building that we lived at. So it was very simple beginnings. When I say I never imagined that one day I would reach all these heights. But for me, the one thing that was always continuous was the love of the game. And I truly have to say thank you to my dad for that, because he always made sure, even under crazy pressure moments, that I was enjoying playing tennis and enjoying the process.
Well, he was a political cartoonist, if I'm not mistaken, and he made it fun for you. And he did draw cartoons. What kind of cartoons did he draw for you?
Well, growing up, I loved to watch Tom and Jerry. That was my favorite cartoon to watch before going to school. And my dad, being the cartoonist, he always looked at a humorous side of stuff. And he says, okay, let me teach her to hit the ball on the rise. And the way he would, myself being dyslexic and a little bit, taking me a time to learn certain techniques and stuff like that. And he was always very adamant, you got to hit the ball on the rise, because you're going to be tiny, skinny, and stuff like that. So you got to have that advantage. And he would draw Jerry on the cartoon and I would be Tom. And that's kind of how I learned to hit the ball on the rise, essentially. But more so that it just made it fun, interactive, before the word interactive was kind of even a cool word. That pretty much I look forward to going on the tennis court with my dad. It was our time spent together. And, later on, as you go through the highs and lows of your career, you kind of remember that first stage. And to me, that always bringing it back to that time in my life always brought me great joy.
I was very close to my dad, and he was my coach, and I can relate to you and your dad. Did you play tennis for your dad in the beginning, or did you only play for yourself?
Oh, absolutely, for myself. No, I loved it. I was always a type A personality. I was very slow to learn, even in school. My best friends always used to say, oh, she will get it, but it'll take her a little bit more time. I think that's being dyslexic, a lefty. So I always looked at stuff in my own different way. And I think my dad was smart enough to see that even in tennis, he did not want to teach me the conventional way to play. Because remember, Chris, growing up that era, on TV, the only two players I thought were playing professional tennis were you and Martina Navratilova. I mean, that's all I would see on TV, because you two were always in the finals. So I had no clue, you had 128 draws and all this other stuff. But my dad, realizing that being a lefty and just a little bit, short attention span and certain things, he had to teach me a different way. And I think going back to that, your original question, I think for me, I always enjoyed going on the court, even in crazy hours, because in the winter time, we didn't have indoor tennis courts where I grew up, essentially. So we would play on basketball courts. But it's always a challenging, fun time, and essentially being pre-competitive. It was always like, okay, I want to beat my dad and stuff like that. But as any player that plays, are there days where you don't want to step on the tennis court? I think you can relate to, absolutely. But one of those things that Mike was really good at is, okay, if you don't want to go, but let's always do something. And for me, now that he's gone, times like that, I cherish even more so.
Well, I have to say about your dad, because I was around him a little bit when you were playing, more parents should look at your dad and realize that you got to make it fun for your kids, because not many fathers back then made it fun for their kids. So kudos to him for that too.
Yeah, I think I was very lucky, because at that point you have no clue. I mean, you're really at the hands of your mom, dad, or your coaches, whoever is around you. But I also understood how much sacrifices, my dad and my mom made for me and my brother to essentially follow the dreams to whatever heights we wanted to take it or were able to take it. And putting the emphasis always on education, because back in my former country I had to go to a regular school, so that always took priority over tennis. But also the sacrifices that I was watching you and Martina in the finals of Wimbledon, and I saw the racket that there was a picture of you in it, and I don't even know the brand, and I said to Dad, I want that racket. It'd probably be, I didn't realize that my dad had to drive to Italy to buy one of those rackets for me because his daughter wanted it. So it was that mutual love and admiration, I think, that we had, and most importantly, that mutual respect. And I think in the long run, I'm not a parent, but I had that dynamic that I really appreciated, that my parents looked at me as an adult in a weird way. Gave me responsibilities, but also let me have fun. So I had that outlet where I never felt I had to rebel, but I also knew my boundaries.
Which brings me to your junior career, which was very short-lived, but very stellar, because you did turn pro at a young age. Talk about that, your junior career, a little bit.
I loved every minute of it. I mean, I was very outspoken that junior tennis needs to stay. But as we evolve and able to manage the parents, agents around it, and let the kids be kids and really just play and build those friendships, I to this day have built friendships that are probably from my junior days, not as much, from my professional days. And for me, back that era was just pure fun. But at the same point, being pushed by other players. I remember seeing, let's say, Stephanie Graf when I first played a tournament in Leitman, Germany, and you would just know this is the person I'm going to be competing in a few years. And I think maybe 4 or 5 years later, we were competing against each other. So I think junior tennis is very important, but keeping it that lightheartedness, I just so much I believe in my heart. Not to put that pressure on the kids, and nowadays we see if you win Orange Bowl at 12 under 18, you have all these crazy expectations, and it's just not fair to the kids, I think. So keeping it lighthearted, in my view, is really important.
At 13, Nick Bollettieri saw you, and he brought you to the Bollettieri Tennis Academy. That was a big move from Yugoslavia at such a young age. What memories do you have of being at the academy?
As a kid, you realize, everybody's looking at this match and there are all these people around, but I never, Nick stood out. Obviously, any of us that know Nick, wherever he goes, we know when Nick enters the room. And Nick gave me an amazing opportunity, offering me a scholarship, bringing me to the States, and just letting me stay so focused and train on tennis for about that period of time that I was at the academy. Was just so valuable, and the positive energy, the motivation that Nick brought, I can't say enough, every single day to the courts, also taught me so much, because think about it, I was coming from a very different culture, coming to the States, was learning experience too, because essentially when I got to the States, I only spoke a few words of English. So there was so many changes happening at 13. I look at that year and I'm just marveling how I was able to get through it.
Now, but you went alone without parents, but your brother was with you, I understand?
Yes, in the beginning I came out by myself, and then my brother came, and he played too. But my brother's 8 years older than I am, and he practiced with, my brother's a good player himself. He was top 2-3 in Europe. So he practiced, with me tons. And, 8 years is a big difference. So it was kind of like I was very socially awkward. If I look back at that stage, that would have been probably the toughest. And I think Nick and really the entire team at the academy took me under their wings, and they wanted to kind of protect me from the outside. And I think the other players or the other at the academy kind of, found me very quiet, very shy, because I would just play tennis and then I would go back to my dorm and really not socialize. But at the same point, that wasn't because I was not friendly. I think that came out of just feeling really, learning my way in a whole new culture, not feeling comfortable in my language, and essentially being 13. 13 is just a tough year. I cut my hair. Being very self-conscious of myself. A lot of stuff were going on until that day. I also grunted in my juniors, but I could notice people were saying stuff. Oh, she's starting to grunt. And at the same point, being this promising champion, that there were so many expectations of me. Like if I didn't reach the top, I would kind of be a failure. So there was a lot of stuff going on, but truly Nick and the entire team at the academy, from Gabe, Fritz, I could go on, Renee, Raul, they took me in as a family. And I look back and I was really one of the few girls. It was very male dominated back then. And just, wanted to be one of them. But it was a tough transition for me. But thankfully, once my parents got to the academy, I felt emotionally a much more happier person, which I think started producing my game also a lot stronger.
Did you turn pro at 15 or 14?
15.
Oh, you turned,
I turned
okay.
pro, I think, in Virginia Slims of Washington, give or take, because my dad always said, if you make a certain amount of money, then you can make that decision. And that was, I think, it had to be 4 years of a average college. And I remember I had to default to Zina Garrison in the semifinals because I twisted my ankle. And I looked at what check I had to give up. And I said, Dad, I think I want to do this. And my dad says, well, think about it a bit. But, my dad always kind of let me make my own decisions. Hey, if it was in the juniors booking the hotel room from Yugoslavia to America on the phone, I did it. But I think he always wanted me to be independent. He was the only child. He lost his dad to very tragic circumstances early on. His mom was a lot older when she had him. And he says, you're going to be one day, you got to figure this stuff out on your own. And he might have started a little bit too early, but it is what it is.
Wow. Well, you talking about being on the Pro Tour, you won your first title when you were 15. Maybe that's what I meant. Virginia Slims of Houston. And gee, Monica, who did you beat in the finals there?
Well, I will tell you, that tournament is forever, in my heart.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, but Chrissy, you beat me in a much bigger tournament like a few months later. But, I just, growing up, as I mentioned before, I admired you and Martina so much. I just, to me, you were like not human in a weird way. I'll never forget when I played against you in Virginia Slims of Boca Raton at the Polo Club. I was 14. It was my first professional tournament, the second round. And I'm curious to know what you thought of me because, later on, I got that similar experience where I had to play somebody like Serena. And I just could not believe that you're actually a real human being. As silly as it sounds, maybe now with the younger generation, but back then, I was like, I am a cross player that I watched, admired for so many years. I made my dad drive over to Italy from Novi Sad to get a racket. I'm actually playing her. So it's such a surreal experience. And you're just like inhaling it. Just, that air is like magical. It's like rare, like you're walking on air. I can't explain it. And then later on, I got to, I got the other end of that rare air when, I was starting to see these younger kids coming up and beating me. So one day you'll have to tell me what you thought of me when I played, when you played this young girl who everybody was hyping up. in Boca Raton, and
But,
then
yeah, I'll tell you in a heartbeat, it was like shocking to see somebody take the ball on the rise and take the ball early and have so much power, and you changed the whole complexion of tennis. You brought another level of the game. You were a game changer, and I learned from that. And because of you, I improved. You know, I feel like I improved, and then I came back and the U.S. Open played, I think, one of the best.
You beat me at the Open.
Yeah, but I think I honestly played one of the best matches of my career, and but I just thought, and I still think to this day, had it not been for the accident that you had, you would have been the greatest of all time. No, hands down. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So anyway, let me get on with your career, because your first Grand Slam title came at Roland Garros against Steffi Graf, and you were merely 16 years old. And I guess I want to know what you remember about that match.
So I played a tough semifinal match against Jennifer Capriati, which, you know, all eyes were on us. Here are the two youngsters, the so-called future of tennis. Tremendous amount of pressure. I remember walking out on Court Chatrier and literally wanting to throw up just from the pressure. But, you know, it's good to be young, where you just say, okay, just go out there and play and move those feet. And then when I got through that match in two sets, I kind of had the same feeling walking out against Graf for that finals. I mean, I knew she wanted to do well because she lost to Sanchez the year before. She wanted to give me a revenge on beating her in her home country in Berlin. And really, that tiebreaker could have gone either way. I mean, against any player to come back from 6-1 is pure luck. But I was just determined to keep it 1 point at a time. And again, all I can remember of that match is kind of telling myself 1 point at a time and just really staying aggressive. One of the gifts, I think, in my early days of my career was I kind of played within myself. And sadly, in the second stage of my career, I had too many balls going all over the place. Maybe that's also getting older and just other stuff coming into play. And winning that match and winning the first Grand Slam tournament for me was just like, I can't explain. I don't know if you felt it when you won your first Grand Slam. It was like, okay, in a weird way, I lived up to my own expectations. Yeah, all those years where, you know, you would cry after losing a match, or just cry when I missed my family back home or whatever. I said, you know what? It's not to say it was worth it, but hey, it's all good. You'll have these moments. So for me, that feeling will, again, kind of like when I won my first tournament in Houston against you, never will be reciprocated. And this one too, that first Grand Slam, forever will stay with me.
Yeah, and I mean, after that, you pretty much dominated 1990, 91, 92, and by 93, you had won 8 majors as a teenager, which nobody will ever do that again. I would put a bet on that, a wager on that, which was you just dominated. And at that point, were you just feeling invincible?
I think probably I started feeling invincible, and this is sad to say because we're never invincible, but probably after I won the Australian Open in 93, because I kind of felt like, okay, I've got these few players, how to play against them, and I kind of starting to know a little bit myself. I think at 60, when I won the French Open, that year after that was really tough because you suddenly have all this attention on you. Just that first Grand Slam is done, but everything changes in your life. I don't know how else to explain it. You know, everything becomes magnified. You suddenly start earning a lot of money. Suddenly you have all this freedom, and at the same point, to manage that is not that easy. And at the same point, you're really 16, so you're kind of fighting that teenager, hey, I just want to rebel, just want to hang with my friends. But at the same point, you really can't. So I would tell my dad, well, I really don't want to kind of practice, I'm feeling tired, which, stuff like that. So it took me about some time and a few tough losses to realize, hey, I better get back to the hard work, that daily grind. Otherwise, there will be no more Grand Slams to come. And I think that's why, for me, the second Grand Slam when I won Australia, it was really kind of like very satisfactory, because I realized, you got to put in the work, Monica. Even more so now, because the players want to beat you even more than they wanted to do that beforehand. And then afterwards, I've had a bit of a hiccup there. I think Wimbledon 91, and then back again, won the US Open in 91, a tough match against Jennifer and Martina, which kind of in my brain solidified me that I could play on hard courts, because I always loved playing on clay. If you ask me what's my favorite surface, clay. Yeah. I was always a bit insecure about hard courts, and grass, whoa, totally insecure when playing on, and that shows in my results. So when I was able to beat those two players back to back at 91 US Open, that gave me incredible confidence. And I think after that, my confidence just kept going each time a little by little up, and it definitely reached its peak at the Aussie Open in 93. Absolutely.
Well, and by that time, the Aussie Open, I believe you had beaten Steffi Graf in 3 out of the 4 finals in majors at that time. And that brings me to 1993, where I think everybody likes to say your innocence was taken away from you, and in Hamburg, Germany, and you experienced a horrible event, and you experienced physical as well as emotional scarring. And what I would like to ask you is, how hard was that for you? And the second question would be, and what did you learn about yourself through this experience?
Well, it's definitely something I never imagined in my wildest dreams that would happen to me, obviously, let alone on a tennis court. And I was just coming back from a long injury. I didn't play for a few months before going to Hamburg. And it was a very difficult time for me and my family, because of everything that was going on back in my former country. It was just really a heartbreaking time in a big picture. In my tennis career, I was playing probably some amazing tennis, but everything else was very tough. So I had to very quickly grow up, and in terms of what was going on. Hamburg made it even faster, because I realized overnight everything can be taken away from something that you have a regimented schedule, what you're doing, to suddenly like, oh, I'm in a hospital bed, and what just kind of happened, situation where my thought was, hey, I'm just coming back playing Magdalena Maleva. I was down 4-1. I'm coming back to 4-3. And, there were so many things going on at that point. That 12-month period leading into Hamburg was one of the most difficult times, because so many things walking on the court. I had to walk on the court under some amazing circumstances that, maybe in hindsight you look back, but you chose to walk on the court. And really, when Hamburg happened and everything surrounding it and everything afterwards with it, I kind of just had to grow up, but also my mindset really changed about how certain things, work and stuff like that. And made me, thankfully at that point, I still had my dad and my mom and my brother around me, but really not many people from the outside world, I would call it, outside the family. And that could be good, that could be bad, but the trust factor was lost very fast. And I look back and I say, I did my best. I try to wake up, get dressed, wash my face, put one foot in the other. Some days, if I could play tennis, great. Some days, if I wanted to, talk to my psychiatrist, I would talk to him. It was just, let's get through this the best that I can. Let's get through the trial where like nothing happened to me. So all these different things I had to somehow internalize, and being a very logical person, nothing that was happening was logical. So it took me a long time, my own way to get to the bottom of things, and then, find peace with it one way or the other.
But you did come back. You did come back 2 years, maybe more than 2 years later. And I remember you played an exhibition with Martina. It's kind of a warm up, and then You came back, you won Toronto, your first tournament back, which is, whoa, that's pretty awesome. And the rest of the decade, you know, you won the Australian Open one more time, and you finished in the top 5 in all of your seasons. So, I mean, it was very, maybe not the most successful in your eyes, but very successful for you to come back with those results. And then you retired in 2008, and I guess I want to know what went into that decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, when I decided to come back in 96, 95, there were a few other times I was thinking, come back, not, but a lot of training goes into comeback. I mean, it's not just like poof, you can get back to the world level. And I didn't play for quite some time after my stabbing. And I also gained a lot of weight, which, in hindsight, probably should have been my main focus to lose, because I think the injuries would have been a lot less and I could have moved better. And back in 95, 96, I could have still gotten those few steps ahead before Serena, Venus, Lindsay came along, who could hit the ball harder and even earlier than I could. So in hindsight, I might have, I would definitely do a few things differently. But at the same point, I look at that 95 Christmas time year when I learned, my dad was very sick, was just really tough, because I felt, okay, I've just come out of darkness from one thing and here comes a totally another thing. And it was just, when that 1-2 punch, and you know it all too well, Chris, starts hitting you, it really got me extremely down. So for me, a lot of the joy for the game, just for life, was a bit gone.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. It's such an up and down career for you, and what could have been. But I tell you what, you have had a very full and busy life, and since then, since retirement, and it includes, a lot of charity work. I know you always support my charity and other players. You wrote a book, which was very inspiring. You're the WTA ambassador. And I think what I love about you is you really took the time to address some very important and crucial issues that not only women, but people in general have gone through: the body shaming and the eating issue and the depression, mental illness. And, you've become a teacher and a mentor to a lot of people. And I just want to know how you feel about that.
Well, for me, it was really very important in my own heart to speak very openly about my own struggles. So if there's maybe somebody out there is in a tennis world or just a non-tennis world, to know that they're not alone. And even somebody like when you, and I'm sure you get this, oh, you're an athlete, you're invincible, you're so tough, nothing gets to you. That you're a human being at the end of the day, and you have feelings too. And look, when I stood at that food line at a tournament, and another male player said some really tough comments about my weight, I'll still remember it 25 years later. I mean, these things stay with you. And after I decided to retire from tennis, for me, transitioning into the so-called regular life was probably easier than I would have imagined, for that one reason, because I think I started to address some of the issues that I had, and some of the things that I felt, I need to address if I want to be a healthy individual, both physically and mentally. And that was kind of my relationship with food and my BED, binge eating disorder, that I had. Sadly, at that point, there was not many people you could talk to about it, because it was mostly anorexia and bulimia. So it was very hard, and it was very hard for people around me to understand, even professionals, like, hey, this is one of the toughest players mentally, yet she can't control how much she's eating. But I was obviously eating my emotions and numbing myself. So one of the things that as I age, or what would be the word, I said, I really want to talk about adult mental wellness, because, we are kids, so important. But for me, it's hard to relate to, because I don't have kids. But all the kids do grow up, and it's okay to talk about it. And I speak very openly about mine. And just, just all the years that I suffered kind of in silence, would it be on tour, in junior years, professional years, or afterwards, I look back, and if I would have had somebody before me who would have maybe spoken about it or told me, hey, you're not the only one that's feeling this way. And now that I met so many other people, I know that. But at that point, I just felt, oh my gosh, it's only me. What a failure I am that I can't control such a simple thing. And, at that point too, also the tennis became much more of a glamour of a sport than maybe when I was coming up. So there was even more extra pressure from companies to fit, to look certain way. And for me, it was very hard to accept that I just could not get to that point. And at the same time, it was really hurting my tennis career. The injuries came much earlier than they really should have come. And being two-handed on both sides, and carrying that extra few pounds, you're definitely slower getting to the ball. So looking back in my career, did it hurt? I do think so. I could have won a few more tournaments if I was in better shape than I was. So
I'm just amazed at how open you have been with all of these issues. And again, I think you have really grown as a person as much as I've known you and become a teacher to me as well as to a lot of people. I know you watch a lot of tennis. Who do you like to watch? Who do you enjoy watching? Who do you think highly of the players nowadays, the current ones?
I love players who are aggressive. I mean, I always enjoy watching players like that. Growing up, I wish I would have played more aggressive in terms of coming to a net. So I love a player like Barty who will mix it up, right, and just always thinking, being creative. But at other times, I also enjoy players who are much more like a ball machine, kind of like in a way I was, just ball after ball hitting it. I will always go back to Serena because I just love the way she plays. Of the younger generation, Naomi, because she reminds me of somebody kind of like me, but even better. She needs to strike that ball and first, bam, bam. Amazed though at how well she moves. Just wow. I mean, I like to watch Pliskova. I mean, I think I really hope she will win a Grand Slam tournament before she retires. I truly think it's a bit for her. I've never met her, so I can't say mental. Obviously, Petra Kvitova, as a fellow lefty, I have, and what happened to her. There's a unique bond and a unique understanding. I always love to watch and how she constructs the points.
You were talking a little bit about your game previously, and I guess as you're talking about all these other women's games, what, in your own words, what were your strengths and weaknesses? And what do you think, the mental part was more important to you or the physical part?
I would say both equally. Mentally, I was very tough in terms of that. I was very even. I think nowadays when you see players, they might have one great match, but then next match so-so, or tournaments. I was pretty even. But I think that generation, you had more of the dominant players. It's kind of known who's going to get to the semis, good or bad. I think and that came to me from the mental discipline. I look back at that, in my own opinion, it's because I played so much on the wall and so much with ball machines, so much repetition. So the way that gave me that consistency, that's just my thought. Physically, and if you look back at some of my matches, I never, I think, got enough recognition how well I retrieved. I was kind of these sneaky retrievers, but I would get back a lot of balls. Yes. And I would fight back every ball. So to beat me, you would have to stay on me literally every ball. And I think that really won me a lot of matches where if I didn't have that, yes, I hit the ball early on the rise and hard. And yes, my backhand was very consistent. My forehand was very 50-50. But I think just that sneaky movement where I would always get ball after ball back and kind of try to neutralize it.
If I may add, what about your hands? Just to find that angle. You had the deep angle and the short angle as well.
That I keep forgetting. Absolutely. That was my bread and butter. That short angle to take you off the court and open it up was big. And you know, that lefty craftiness on the serve where I would take you out a bit. Absolutely.
I want to show you the trophy though. This is the trophy.
Here it is.
The number one, world number one, and
yeah. Such an amazing group. I mean, I'm sure for you, Chris, it truly is. I mean, as we get older and, you know, we realize what life is about, family, good friends, and just what we put in for that trophy, and what we dedicated a huge part of our lives, and how much we love the sport.
I just want to thank you, Monica. You, to me, are a very special person, and I'm sure in a lot of people's eyes. And you've affected and enhanced lives on the court as well as off the court, and in a very, very positive way. And keep the good work up. And we want you to still remain in tennis in any capacity.
Thank you, Chrissy, for doing this with me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Big kiss.